Hey friends, this is Matt with Q4Launch. Excited to be connecting with you today. I hope you guys are having an awesome start to your summer. Crazy, we're in the middle actually, probably now of summer, but it's been exciting. It's been a wild ride the last few months. We are excited you guys are tuned in today as we dive into micro weddings. A new kind of boom is here or is coming. And we're excited. It's thundering here where we are, so there was a new kind of boom here just a few minutes ago that rocked our office pretty good. But hopefully you're having great weather where you are. We're excited to connect with you and talk about this new kind of boom. If this is your first time with us, thanks for joining us as well. I'm the founder of Q4Launch. We're a destination hospitality travel marketing agency based in Charleston, South Carolina, with customers from Singapore to Maui. And we are excited by the many of you that have started following us during coronavirus, many for the first time, as well as the faithful, loyal, longtime followers as well that tune in to our videos that we share to try to help share what we're seeing in the hospitality and the lodging and in the travel space to educate you, get you thinking about marketing and website design and what opportunities might exist for you in the coming seasons. So that's our focus today, to talk about a unique opportunity that has been kind of trending, but as we are anticipating will be exploding this fall. So we're excited about that. As we transition into that, let's talk a little bit about fall and kind of what we're looking at as we look ahead to fall. Many of you have been tracking along with us over the last 4 months as we've made a variety of predictions of what travel was going to look like through and on the back end of coronavirus. Many of you have reached out to us as many of those predictions have come true, and it's been really exciting to see. We also know that that's not true in every destination, and that certain destinations are struggling more than others, and some are still struggling, and our heart goes out to you. We understand that, we see that, and we celebrate with those that are having great success right now, and we mourn with those that are not. But we're trying to present data and information in a big picture. You know, as I referenced, we've got customers from Singapore to Maui, and our heart goes out especially to those international customers that are struggling more so than our US-based customers are. But even in the Caribbean and in Jamaica and many places, seeing a strong rebound coming on right now. Europe still struggling a little bit, not coming on quite as strong, but many destinations are coming on strong. So we're excited about that. So let's talk briefly about what we expect to come this fall. One, we think travel is looking really strong. It's really different, but it's really strong. I was watching a video from the CEO of Airbnb this week, and he said travel will never be the same. And I don't know if I would go as far as saying we'll never be the same, but it will certainly not be the same for quite some time. Doesn't mean that it will not happen, it just won't be the same. We've talked all throughout this period about people really looking for those drive trips and different things there, although we have seen a significant increase in fly markets doing really well in the last weeks and months as well. So certainly encouraged about what we're seeing for the fly markets, but the ones that are the drive markets are certainly the ones that are exceeding those that are fly markets. But we believe a really strong fall is ahead. One of those opportunities is going to be traditional travel. It's not traditional in the sense that it's going to be the same, but traditional in drive market, core business, romantic getaways, family reunions, all those types of things we think will continue to happen into the fall. We also think some unique opportunities will present themselves this fall, weddings being one of the big ones that we're going to talk about today. We'll touch on a few others, but there's going to be some more information coming from us in future videos on some other opportunities for the fall. So we'll save some of that for some future videos. You got to come back and check those out. We also see a strong trend right now to independent accommodations. The vacation rental industry is doing really well as a part of being a very naturally social distanced industry. So that's great, and we celebrate that success. We're also seeing great success with the stay small, stay safe messaging, and people shifting from big box hotels to smaller B&Bs, boutique hotels, and that part of the market seems to be doing really well. Again, destination specific, but doing a lot better, and we're excited about that as we see that trend continuing for years to come. I think it's probably the strongest it's going to be at the peak of this virus as far as people saying, I want to stay small, I want to stay safe, I want to stay socially distanced, and how can I do that? And making those decisions in their travel, but I don't see that changing anytime soon, and that's good news for most of the people that follow us, the small, independent, boutique accommodations. So great news for most of you, a little bit more challenging for some of the larger resorts we work with, but definitely some ways to leverage that there and a different conversation overall. We also see another round of stimulus coming. It's being talked about in the news right now. I think both parties support that, and I certainly think that that's part of the benefit we've seen this spring and summer from a travel perspective. When you inject that much capital into the economy, at least in the United States economy, you're going to have people spending money on trips. There's a lot of people that spend money they don't have on trips, so you give them some extra money to spend, and certainly a lot of people will choose to spend that on trips. A lot of people are choosing to spend that in other categories as well, but travel is a category a lot of people are really yearning for right now. And if we see another stimulus, another injection of capital into our economy, we anticipate not a majority, but a lot of money will be spent on travel as part of that second round of stimulus, or third round, or whatever round it technically is. But another round of stimulus nonetheless, and we think a lot of that money is going to go to travel. So all in all, we are really excited about what this fall is going to bring. We think for you, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity ahead this fall. We think you're going to have to market a little bit differently to reach that opportunity. We think that customer is going to be a little bit different, so you're going to have to get in their path a little bit differently. And we're working closely with our customers on fall marketing plans now. Q3 really executing on that, but then really starting the fall conversation. The Q4 conversation, if you will, no pun intended, but the Q4 conversation about what the fall and the fourth quarter of this year is going to look like. So as a marketer who works with so many of you and partners with you in growing your business, I am really excited and encouraged about the data that we're seeing and what everything is lining up. We've been right in many of our predictions to this case up to this point, and I have no reason to think we're not going to be right about what we're predicting for the fall as well. So excited about that. All right, so that sets the stage for the fall. Let's dive in and talk a little bit about our topic today. Micro weddings, a new kind of boom is here. So let's first talk about what is a micro wedding. And if you back up a little bit, actually kind of to last summer 2019, micro weddings were widely being discussed as a new bridal trend in mid-2019 and on into early 2020. So they were something that was already trending. Then you inject COVID and a pandemic and no large group gatherings into the situation, and it was we believe those things coming together means it's the perfect opportunity for this to explode this fall in an exciting way. And it is going to be booming in our new current normal. I don't want to say the new normal, try not to say that because I don't want this normal to stay around forever. But I think in our current normal, this is a trend that is set to explode, and we're really wanting to make sure our customers are positioned for that. As we think about that, the average wedding costs about $34,000 in the United States. That's crazy to hear. I actually heard a stat in Charleston, the average wedding costs over $100,000, which is totally insane. I can guarantee you my wedding didn't cost nearly that, much to the thankfulness of my father-in-law. But the average wedding costs about $34,000 in the United States right now. The average micro wedding is really being targeted at a $2,000 to $4,000 spend. And when you think about it, I think that's part of why this was trending, because people were like, holy smokes, why are we spending all this money throwing these massive parties? For some people that are even on the outside edges of our circles, let's really focus it into a smaller group, the people we care about the most, and spend more maybe per person, but have a better, smaller experience for them. So as you're thinking about that, that might be kind of an entry-level budget price point to kind of target your offerings around. We also know that this has made up about 10% of the wedding market in recent years. But as I mentioned, we're expecting it to make up a large percentage of the wedding market in this fall season. And I'm talking about fall specifically because fall is a huge wedding season. Doesn't mean this isn't happening now, that you shouldn't start executing on this as soon as possible. I have two good friends of mine in the industry whose kids have gotten married in the last 30 days and canceled large weddings and had micro weddings with immediate family and very, very close friends, kind of the groomsmen and the bridesmaids kind of closeness of friends. So that is happening right now, absolutely. But I think as you see traditionally more weddings in the fall, you're going to see more micro weddings in the fall as well. We also know that the brides want these small on size, but big on special, right? I mean, if you think about it, the smaller it is, the bigger you can go with some of those details without it breaking your budget. So as you're thinking about that, small on size but big on special is a really big part of this, part of what we're trying to accomplish here. And as you're thinking about marketing, you focusing on that big on special is going to be a really big thing. And I don't mean specials like you're used to hearing them, specials on things on sale or promotion or anything. I'm talking special like the details, the things that really make it a special event, a special venue, a special place, something that's memorable. That's what people are after. I also want to call out the fact, and this is going to range, and this is something you have to think about strategically in your own business, your own properties, your vacation rentals, your B&B, your boutique hotel, whatever it is, and that's guest count. We found information that says the average micro wedding is probably in the 20 to 50 guest count. Some sources say 20, some say 50. It doesn't really matter what the industry standard is. You've got to look at it and say, okay, what's right for me? What's right for my property? What's right for my vacation rental? What's right for my B&B? Or what's right for me as an owner operator? Like, what group size am I comfortable with? And you've got to make the decisions based off that and then clearly communicate what those are. It doesn't matter what yours are necessarily. Of course, the larger you have capacity for, the more market you're able to address. But you've got to think about what's right for you and your business and your setting and get comfortable with that. Obviously, parking is a big issue when you talk about weddings and group sizes and everything else. So there's a lot of logistics to think about that go into group size. There's no right or wrong group size. The point is right size it for your property for a great special experience. That's the key takeaway there that I think you really need to be thinking about as it comes to size, and then clearly set that expectation right up front in the bulleted point details. Communicate your capacity conversation. That will help eliminate leads that aren't the right fit for you as part of the process. Something else we wanted to call attention to is that this is not the same as an elopement. In some of our early conversations, we've heard a little bit, oh, well, I already do elopements, and this is here, and this is that, so it's the same thing. Not at all. Elopements are perceived very differently. They're also searched for differently. So not saying you shouldn't do elopements, I'm just saying micro weddings are different than elopements. Typically speaking, elopements are kind of more perceived as a sudden or secretive wedding that might just be the bride and the groom and whoever on your property. Family is usually finding out afterwards, in my experience with elopements. So different. May still be something you look at and target, but it's a different type of target. So if you've targeted elopements in the past, had or have not had success with them, totally different thing. Don't discount micro weddings because you do or do not like elopements. And don't think you've already got micro weddings covered because you already have elopements covered. It's a different target market altogether. So let's look at one other trend that we're seeing, and a buzzword or a keyword you might see, and that's a Minimony, which I think I said that right. There's a lot of different words to look at here, but what's a Minimony? Playing off of a mini ceremony, really focusing in this case probably on up to 10 guests, but again, size is relevant to your destination. And it's typically going to be followed at a later date by a traditional larger wedding. So as we think about that from marketing purposes, it's probably a lot like a micro wedding. So I would include both of those terms, and I think you can combine them. The Minimony might be smaller than the micro wedding, but you can probably combine some of those terms from an SEO content perspective and go after those things together. Probably a Minimony and a wedding are more similar than an elopement and a micro wedding are. So to kind of put that in perspective there. But you also have to understand how these different ceremonies are different and decide how you're going to cater to them differently. So different group sizes, different expectations, different needs. Understand how you're going to accommodate these group sizes accordingly. And how to set those things up for success. One of the weddings that was canceled that became a micro wedding or a Minimony, I'm not really sure which because I don't know their exact guest count, but they booked here in the Charleston area, did a beach wedding, and rented 2 condos side by side in one of our resort communities here. So a great example, booked 2 vacation rentals side by side, did the wedding on the beach with an officiant, came back, kind of had the family gathering there in a public space. Really easy to do, all outside, very attainable, and a great example of this trend that we're seeing right now. So a lot going on there. All right, let's pivot a little bit and let's start talking about who the audience is for micro weddings, Minimonies, elopements, whatever else we're going to call them. I would say that it's basically everyone planning a wedding in 2020. I know so many people that had a wedding date and they rescheduled it and they rescheduled it and they rescheduled it. And the third time around, they're like, I'm over it, right? At the end of the day, people are still going to get married. They're still going to get married. They still want to celebrate. And they're over trying to predict when COVID is going to end. And I think many of them, instead of delaying that and trying to predict when it's going to end are now just shifting into, okay, we're just going to do a small wedding, and we may or may not ever do a big traditional ceremony on the back end of this thing. But what I know is I'm going to move forward, I'm going to get married to the person that I love, and I'm going to have the people closest to me there to celebrate that moment with me. Whether that's 10 people or 50 people, I'm going to have those people there to celebrate that with me. So basically everyone planning a wedding in 2020 is probably going to be planning a mini wedding or a micro wedding or a Minimony or whatever in the world term we come up with next to call these as marketing people. But that's your target market, right? This massive wedding industry that is going to see a huge shift to this mini ceremony or this micro wedding. You also may not have these people in your database right now, but what you do have in your database are people like me who are potentially married or not getting married. In my case, already married, happily so, with 2 beautiful daughters, which we should love to put a picture of, but we're not going to. But I had to brag on them for a minute. But people like me who know people who are getting married. So when I got that call, hey, my son's canceled his wedding, we're going to do this mini ceremony in Charleston, how can you help? Can you introduce me to some people? Can you get a photographer lined up? And I used my connections to help those people. In the same way, people that are following you are great referral sources. Point being that marketing this message to your current database, when your first instinct might be like, oh, I don't have any of these leads in my database, how would I reach them? Messaging that to your current database gets you top of mind with them, and I would bet a lot of people in your database know people who are going to get married in the next 6 to 12 months, 3 months, tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow's too late, but you get the point. And those are great referral sources. So communicating this, educating your current database, even when you might think, oh, I don't have this prospect in my database, you have friends of these prospects in your database, and that is so important. We also know you need to overcome the traditional wedding stereotypes. I'm sure many of you are sitting there saying, oh, weddings, that's the last thing I want to do in my business. Bridezilla, I've seen the movie. I get it, I know you have. But smart businesses right now are saying, how can we shift our business model to accommodate traveler trends that are coming into the marketplace right now? And this is certainly one of those traveler trends. And yes, there are Bridezilla horror stories out there. And yes, there will be micro wedding and mini wedding Bridezilla stories out there. Probably more so because the stress level is ratcheted up in the middle of COVID and everything else. But what we also know to be true is those horror stories might be 1% or 5% of the overall addressable market. Doesn't mean you're not going to have them. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do your best to address them, make sure that the guest count size is right and set yourself up for success. But my encouragement to you is to lay down some of the perceptions you might have on weddings and reasons you may or may not want that to be a part of your business, and be willing to try it. Because I think the people that do, the people that market to it well, that address this growing addressable market, are going to have tremendous success this fall. And we have to start that process now. If we want to position that, obviously a lot of advanced planning goes into weddings. So these people are searching now, they're getting engaged now, they're setting things up. There is no perfect timing except for today. Today is all we can control. Let's go after this. Let's step forward in this today, and let's then set ourselves up when the bookings happen. We can't predict when COVID's going to end. We can't predict how long this trend is going to last, although I think it's probably here to stay in a lot of ways. But I think that we can control what we can control, and that's get our marketing aligned to reach this target market and lay down the biases or the perceptions we might have of what it means to be in the wedding business, and think, instead of thinking, oh no, I can't do that, or that doesn't work for my property, or instead of thinking those negative shutdown kind of thoughts, asking yourself the questions of, how could I make this work? How can I make this work? Go through the process of saying, how can I? Go through the process of actually planning one of these, even if it's not a real one. Go through the process. Force yourself to think creatively in this, and I think you'll find solutions that otherwise you may have left untouched. And in doing that, open your business up to some new revenue opportunities that you may not have had in the past. So really exciting opportunity, I believe, that sits ahead for those that are willing to get a little uncomfortable, do something they've never done, and go after this target market. So how do we prepare for those customers, right? That's one of the things we just touched on. Let's prep for these customers and go after them well. One, how can you make your space special? We talked earlier that they're small on price, but they're big on special, and we really need to focus on that. So what are those things we can do? Saw a great example of one of the properties we work with. They're always doing innovative and industry-driving things. Justin Ginslinger at the Settlers Hospitality Group, shout out to you, because you always challenge me to think better, think stronger, and I love to see some of the things you've been doing during COVID. But they took a space behind their inn, a previously unused space, and converted it into what's called Grant's Woods. You can go to the Settlers Inn and you can check that out on their social media. There's a great video there. I think we can also get a picture put up here for you of just an image of that. But taking an unused space and just did what they could to make it special. Now, they didn't set it up specifically for a wedding venue. They set it up to be more about socially distanced eating and restaurant, and I think they're eventually going to convert that into accommodations. That's their long-term plan. But point being, you'd be amazed what some cafe lights and just a little bit of specialness can do for a space. So with a small budget, you can make a big impact in that special category. So look around you. Look at your vacation rentals. Look in the backyards. Which ones set themselves up well for this? Look at your B&B. What do you have? What assets do you have? Do you have a river? Do you have a scenic place? Is there a place you could put up a gazebo or a pergola or some type of structure or cafe lights to create an outdoor atmosphere that's really beautiful? It's amazing what a little bit of flowers and a little bit of structure and a little bit of lights can do for a space, especially when the setting is right and it's sunset or it's whatever else. So look around your properties and say, how can we make this special? And as you're doing that, get inspired by pictures online. Go search for things, see what's trending, search for different hashtags, and see what's out there, see what's trending, see what's getting shared a lot, because those are indicators. Those are the things brides think are special. So how can you make those places special? Those natural and man-made assets, how can we leverage them and make them special? And use those recent trending wedding photos to really get yourself inspired around that. Focus on the things you might even be able to DIY, because certainly cash flow and budgets can be tight. So do it yourself, or do it on a budget, or do it inexpensively through kind of pre-manufactured stuff like pergolas and gazebos, probably a little bit more expensive, but it's really amazing some of the creative stuff you'll see out there that's just not that expensive, but can really dress up a space. All right, how do we prepare for those customers? Step 2 of that, do an audit of your website, because if you have not been big in the wedding business before, your website is not ready for this. And if you start doing the work to get found and your website's not ready for it, one, it probably wouldn't have gotten found in the first place, but two, brides are going to come like, oh, this isn't set up for this. So if this has been maybe a back channel part of your business, a small part of your business, you really need to bring it to the forefront if it's an area you're going to target. Or maybe you've never targeted it at all and you need to think differently about how do you do that. So what do you need to be thinking about when you're auditing your website? Here are some thoughts for you. One, do you have wedding content that quickly jumps out? When somebody gets to your website, does your website jump out and say, yes, we do weddings, here's where you find more information? Grab the bride's attention quickly, ideally with photographs and with strong calls to action, and get them to the part of your site they can find more information. And when I say get them to the part of your site where they can find more information, get them to a dedicated landing page with content that's optimized for the right keywords. Content optimized for the right keywords. Easy to say, hard to execute on, but understand what those keywords are, build content that goes after them, or if you're our customer, we're doing this for you if this is a part of your target market, and go after that. So micro weddings, Minimonies, elopements, small wedding, look at that keyword group and say, okay, how do I target this keyword group, and then go after that. I would also add to that, brides love photos. So include a lot of photos in a gallery style format so it's easy to get on the site, easy to set up. Make sure those are optimized for size so you don't bog your website down by putting a bunch of 10 megabyte print quality images on your website. But optimize those images for website size, get them on your website, get a gallery. Brides will love to click through those photos. You could also include certain like custom graphics, call to action graphics into, or testimonials into those galleries to start incorporating some things. So maybe you have a great image of a bride's wedding and there's 10 images of the bride's wedding, and then that 11th image is actually an image of the bride and the groom with an overlay of a testimonial on it. lots of different things you can do there to kind of use those images and spice it up, work testimonials, work calls to action, work other things into those galleries to make them work for you. So great opportunity there to make sure that your website is ready for that and that you're reaching that audience. You've prepared yourself to be able to do that. Also build packages, right? So next thing we can do to prepare ourselves is to build packages. Make it easy to buy. I talked earlier that kind of the general consensus is that these small weddings are $2,000 to $4,000. That may be a general consensus from stats we saw, but it is certainly not limited to that. Certainly people are going to be spending more than that on many of these things. But build packages at different price points based on different guest counts. Really look at how to put those packages together to make it easy on somebody, right? For the most part, these are probably going to be destination weddings, maybe not. But if it is a destination wedding, think about how that customer is different. They're going to need accommodations. Well, pretty much everybody needs accommodations because they have people coming in town for this wedding. They're going to need officiants. They're going to need caterers. They're going to need florists. They're going to need all these things, and they don't have these connections. So make it easy on people, especially if you want it to be a quick wedding. Use preferred vendors, meaning that you want to turn a quick wedding because you want to turn more than one in a day. You need to have your preferred partners, your preferred vendors that know you're up against that timing and can align with your timing. But make it easy for them to book. Make it, if you're a vacation rental manager, make a package that can be added to certain rentals in your inventory and communicate how that's going to work within that content. If you're a B&B in a boutique hotel, you've probably already done some of this work, but package those things together. Make it really easy at different price points. Make it easy as possible for people to book. Provide the officiant, provide the catering referrals, provide the equipment rentals, provide the upfront costs if you can. And then also be very upfront and clear with what your COVID or your cancellation policy is. We want to overcome any unknowns that we can. Anything that would stop somebody from doing business with us or booking with us, let's break down as many of those barriers as we can. Let's lay down the crazy, ridiculous policies that we've created because of the one bridezilla you had in the past. Lay that down, move forward and say, okay, I'm not going to have that crazy policy because I'm going to do as much business as I can here, and I'll address it if I have to when I get to it, if you run into a bridezilla again. We see a lot of people creating policies to address a one-off situation that is a totally random, crazy customer that happened one time, and now you create a policy that prevents other people from doing business with you because of that one situation. We've talked about that as being a conversion killer from a website perspective before, but the same is true of really any business policy, but specifically applied to weddings here. So make sure you're communicating your cancellation, your COVID policies, your other wedding policies, but don't make them so restrictive that no one can do business with you. All right, so we talked about that. We talked about how to get yourself ready. We've talked a little bit, but want to expand on how to get your B&B or boutique hotel ready. And for the vacation rental managers tuning in, we're going to talk about you next. But how do you get your B&B and boutique hotel ready to host weddings if you haven't? One, stage some great pictures. If you've never hosted weddings in the past, as I mentioned 3 or 4 times already, photography is huge. So have a big fake wedding. There used to be a thing, and my wife was in the wedding business here in Charleston for a while, and it was the big fake Charleston wedding. And they did everything, they did the whole thing. There was a fake bride and a fake groom. But find some people, find a friend who still has their wedding dress, and stage a big fake wedding at your property. I know it sounds ridiculous, and you're so busy right now, you're like, Matt, I couldn't even begin to do that. But have fun with it, right? Find 10 of your friends, do your best socially distancing that you can. Find a friend who, maybe it's your friend or your friend's daughter or whoever, still has a wedding dress that they fit into, jokes aside, but a wedding dress that they fit into, and have a party. Have a party for 10 people, stage a fake wedding, and have a photographer come. You can probably get them to come for free by promising them referrals for future business. But if not, spend a little bit of money to have a photographer take some pictures of your fake wedding and use those pictures as your first wedding. Nobody wants to know that they're your first customer. So have your first customer be a fake wedding, a big fat fake wedding on your property, and have some fun with that. I think you'd be surprised. We could probably all use a little bit of that kind of fun in our life right now to de-stress and just celebrate. So do that as part of getting yourself ready. And look at that underutilized real estate that you might have and be able to repurpose that on a budget. We talked about that. We talked about knowing your ideal guest count size and your limits. Know this, document this, communicate this, know how you're going to park people. And include a honeymoon package, right? Have this great wedding, don't forget the honeymoon package. I'm sure you wouldn't, because you know all about how profitable the honeymoon business can be, but include a honeymoon package for these people. All right, we talked to our B&Bs and boutique hotels about how to get your property ready. Now for my vacation rental managers, let's talk about that. How do you get your vacation rentals ready? This is a little bit of a different challenge. First, you got to go through your inventory and identify which of your vacation rentals really set themselves up for these, and identify that group first and foremost. But then as you're doing that and you're identifying that group, think about capacity, ideal capacity for each of those, and communicate that. And as part of that, I would encourage you to update your vacation rental descriptions with that information. Just proactively update your descriptions and talk about, does it or does it not set up for that type of event? Because people might be looking for vacation rentals with that in practice in mind, but not be searching for that specifically. So think about that. Think about, how do I set my properties up for this? How do I get that information? We were looking at a potential customer's website just the other day, and the first paragraph of their property descriptions, they had gone through and they had specifically talked about how the properties set themselves up for remote work. They talked about desks and Wi-Fi and access to things that remote workers would need who are on the remote work vacation that's booming right now. So they had taken a great step. That told us, hey, this is a great potential customer because they get it. They're already a step ahead of the game. But they had updated those descriptions, and not just vaguely, but very specifically in the first paragraph to address that new target market that's come out for them. And the same is true for weddings. If you're going to use vacation rentals to host micro weddings or Minimonies or whatever you want to call them, small family weddings, you've got to update those descriptions and make sure that you've got the capacity for each of those set up, and show, if you can, much more difficult for you, but show how that's going to look, and stage those if you can. So really important part, but stage your rentals to take pictures of that type of activity if you can. I know it's a lot, could be potentially a lot on your operations or your facilities team this time of year, but the farther you can go with that, the more success you're going to see. You also need to be building landing pages specifically for rentals who can accommodate this. We're going to get some example screenshots here up in the video for you to kind of check out some ways to do that. But talk about building landing pages specifically for rentals who can accommodate this, and then segment those, if you can, by guest count, either by the guest count that the house limits or the guest count that the backyard facility or beach out back might be limited to, or the parking might be limited to. Also, if there's public parking nearby and you could route people to that, all good information to have in this information, in these descriptions, as you're helping people understand, does this set up for it? As you're thinking about that, obviously parties are a huge concern for vacation rentals, and they're a concern for our B&Bs and boutique hotels too, more so for vacation rentals because there's typically not staff there to shut that down. So just communicate that. Like, again, it's the 5% that you might have a problem with. So communicate your expectations around that. Set your size limits, accordingly to make sure that these things don't get out of hand, and then understand, maybe we need to monitor these a little bit differently than we would traditional guests. But is the opportunity worth the extra work of having to monitor them? So certainly something to be thinking about there as you're working towards that. And as just as clear as you are with your guest count for these micro weddings, be clear with your party policy as it relates to these, and just open and upfront about the where you stand on them and the consequences of a wedding, a small micro wedding, turning into a party that could get out of hand, because nobody wants that at their properties, right? And your homeowners may have concerns about that, but don't let that bias, that concern, prevent you from going after a huge opportunity here. So that's my encouragement there. I know it's a big issue and a deep thing for many vacation rentals, and many of you have been burned in the past. But as much as you can, learn from those experiences, but don't let them prevent you from stepping forward into this opportunity. All right, so let's talk for a few minutes. How do we reach these customers? We talked about how do we prepare for them? How do we make sure we're ready? We're going to talk about how to reach these customers. And there's going to be a little bit of overlap here, but we want to touch base on as much as we can, make sure you've got as much information as you can. So how do we reach these customers? Update your website accordingly. Talked a little bit about this, going to hit on it again. Do an SEO or a search engine optimization audit of your current website, your content, and how it's structured. Review your homepage copy and your photos. Make sure all of that is aligned. Talked about that earlier, but this is so important. Add the custom landing pages that I talked about. Really key. And having calls to action on that. Add lead generation opportunities to convert this traffic into leads. As we've talked about in other things, and if you follow our marketing, you'll see a lot of lead generation in the work that we do. because people are in the dreaming and planning stage of weddings, just like they're in the dreaming and planning stage of traditional travel. A little bit different, but still has the dreaming and planning stage. And in that stage, they will respond to a lead generation call to action, a guide they can download, or a checklist they can get, or something that helps them in their planning process. You get them as a lead, they get that valuable information, and then you can start the process of nurturing those leads accordingly. So make sure that's part of your process here, differently than you may have thought about it being in the past. Target your existing customers with this new offering. I talked early on in this, and actually several times, about how I'm not in the market to get married, but I do have friends are. And in the same way, people in your database, your past customers, your existing customers, know people who are getting married. Some of them themselves may be getting married. But don't forget to market to your past guests just because you're like, oh, they're not the target market for this. It's people that are in this age range or whatever. They are your referral sources. So make sure, and not only are they your referral sources, chances are they love your brand, they love your property, they've left you 5-star reviews. Lots of things to think about there, but these are the people, an important part of this audience you need to be reaching. Do that via dedicated email blast. And I say dedicated email blast because the email blast should be dedicated to this topic. Really get it out there. You're like, oh, there's such a small percentage of my database that it might be relevant for. It doesn't matter. If it's not relevant, they won't click on it. But get it out there, get the messaging out there, use calls to action, use images, use subject line, use copy that's dedicated around this topic. That's also a list of people you could potentially follow up with. Continue to mention it in future email blasts. So don't send one dedicated email blast and be like, did it, crushed it, we're done. You're never done. Continue to message that. Maybe don't have every email blast you send, probably not every email blast you send be dedicated to weddings, but you should be mentioning that content regularly because you don't know when someone's going to come into market for that or have a friend that comes into market for that. It takes a lot of repetition to educate people about an offering that you have. Always surprises me how many times people have to be told something before it really sinks in. So repetition, 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 really important as part of this strategy. Also send success stories as part of future emails. So you start getting your first couple weddings, or you have that big fat fake wedding that I joked about, but I was serious. Invite me to your big fat fake wedding because I could use a good party right now. But you get the point. Like, send that success story out. Take pictures. Tell people about the event. Post it on social media. Send it out as an email, and tell people about how much fun it was and the bride, and include a testimonial. All of those things are really good to do. And then take all of the above and repeat it in social media. All that content needs to be put out in social media. And have fun with this. It's a great opportunity to have fun with that type of thing too, and talk to people about what you're doing, what you're working on, why you're doing it. Tell them that you staged a big fat fake wedding on social media. I think you'll have a ton of great engagement with that content. All right, so that's how we market this offering to our existing customers, our existing guests. How do we reach new guests with this? As with most things, Google search is going to be key. A lot of SEO work needs to be done to go after this audience and set the landing pages up and do all those things to be successful from a Google search perspective. There's Google ad groups that can be very effective for this as well. So organic search as well as paid search can be a big part of your strategy here and should be a big part of your strategy here. Networking with local and regional event planners can certainly be a part of your strategy. It's more boots on the ground. It can be harder to do. It's one of those things you have to do versus trusting somebody like us to do for you. But networking is always a great way to get those businesses, get those leads. And if this is a new offering for you, this is especially true because people that are being approached about weddings might not think of you as a wedding venue or your vacation rentals as a wedding venue because you've never been in that business before. But as your business is changing, you have to go out and educate them about those changes that are being made. Facebook ads can be effective here as well as Instagram ads because you can really target people. Specifically on Facebook, you can target that engaged tag and be able to reach that audience with that tag. So people you know are going to be in market to get married. You can do that regionally too. So you can add a lot of different layers to that targeting and use great photos and galleries and social media to be able to reach people here, as well as using hashtags in social media. Being able to use hashtags if there are any that are relevant hashtags in your local destination, certainly, research that and use those hashtags to get your photos found for those weddings. And then lastly, creating listings. A couple sites that can be very effective to create listings. Now these memberships can vary in cost and can get expensive quickly. So make educated decisions there. But sites like The Knot, weddingwire.com, weddingwire.com, venuereport.com. Some great opportunities to check those out and look for places you can create these listings for your property and help you get your property found for people that already have a lot of wedding traffic. Another point I'll make, last key point I'll make here about how to reach this audience is that understand this is a proactive sales approach, not a reservation taking for traditional bookings. So there is a fundamental mind shift that has to happen here. And if you have a reservations team or you're answering the phone yourself, no matter which it is, there's a fundamental mind shift that has to happen here. From taking a reservation, which is a very passive activity in most cases, although it shouldn't be. It should be a very proactive, very scripted, very intentional activity. But for many of us, it's probably a very passive activity where we're just receiving information. Should not be. But this is not that. This is a proactive sales approach. And as you're generating leads, as you're generating opportunities, as you get interest and you get forms filled out or whatever else, this isn't sit back and take an order. This is get the lead, answer questions, call them back and answer questions, schedule a follow-up call, answer questions, schedule a site visit if you can, answer questions. There are going to be a lot more questions around weddings than there are around traditional bookings. So as such, the price point should be big enough to justify that added time and expense associated with that. If you're big enough, you may even look at having, shifting a resource or part of a resource into dedicating to this area on your sales or reservations team. If you're smaller and you're doing most things yourself, you need to think about how am I going to carve out time for this? But track these people, develop a database of these people. It's a pipeline in the sales world if you're not familiar with it, but build your bride's pipeline for your weddings and make sure you're working that pipeline on a regular basis. Identify that team member who's going to run point on these leads. And it shouldn't just be, if you're big enough to have a reservations team, it shouldn't just be across the reservations team as a whole. My advice would be to dedicate somebody on that team or a person or two that is really trained deeply into this area and knows how it's different than taking a traditional reservation, and can also educate and proactively overcome some of the potential ways this could go wrong. Guest count being too big, parties, things like that. They can proactively address those things in the sales process so they're less likely to come up when the actual event is occurring. And then define your lead follow-up plan. So you've identified, you've got a plan to track your pipeline, you've got people dedicated to run this for you. Define your lead follow-up plan and understand, really try to put yourself in the mind of a bride with everything going on, as stressful as that is to begin with for most people. Then you stack COVID on top of it, and just understand where they are and what their needs are in this process and do everything you can to make their needs easier. The easier you can make it for them to buy from you, the more people will buy from you. So make it as easy as possible for them to buy from you. I can't stress how important this is enough. We do all this work. We get our properties ready. We get our websites ready. We get our marketing ready. We generate these leads. And if you don't do it well from a sales pipeline management perspective, you will leave so much revenue on the table. So can't stress this enough, how key this part of our conversation is. Not spending a ton of time here, but it's an absolutely key part of the conversation. So that's it. That's all I've got for you today. That is everything I know about weddings, which as a middle-aged man is not a whole lot, but I have done a lot of research and I do know a little bit about marketing, more about marketing than I do about weddings. I hope this was helpful for you. Pair this, go interview a bride who's planning a wedding right now to learn even more. Can't encourage you enough in that. But I hope this was helpful for you. We love you guys. We love partnering with you. Those of you who are customers, we love working with you on a day-to-day basis. Those of you who follow us, we love that too, and hope that we are helping you and your businesses on a regular basis. If there's anything we can do to more formally help you, if you're looking at, hey, that all sounds great, Matt, but I don't have a clue to get started in that, get in touch with us. We'd love to talk to you more specifically about how we could partner with you in executing on many of the things we've talked about today. So reach out to us. Go to our Contact Us page or our Get in Touch page on our website. We'll put that information on the screen now for you on how you can reach out to us. You can email us at info@Q4Launch.com. You can call us. You can reach out to us on social media. You can invite us to your big fat fake wedding, and we'll see if we can make that happen. Whatever, get in touch with us. We'd love to connect with you guys. Thank you for tuning in today's webinar. If it was helpful for you and you got some new nugget or some actionable insight, I am so excited. That's why we do this. We would appreciate it if you leave us a 5-star review on Google. You can go to our Google page. We'll drop a link out there for you for that as well. We love those 5-star reviews. They help us know that we're doing a great job creating content, educating, and sharing our insights with the industry. So that's a selfish ask if we can, but if you've learned anything today, if you've gotten inspired, please go leave us a 5-star review on Google. We would greatly appreciate that. As always, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your business. Thank you for the time and the trust that you put in us. We appreciate it very much. From our team to yours, we'll talk to you again soon.